Hello and welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me again for another night of Facebook Live. Also, I want to give recognition to those that join me on the replay from YouTube and or SoundCloud. I am your host, Tricia Bray Smith, author, educator, and public speaker. It is indeed a blessing to be here with you tonight, and I hope that your day has been blessed. I myself have had a productive, blessed, and yet demanding day. Um, Also, our internet services have been out around this area, and it just came on about 20-30 minutes ago. So I was glad to be able to sit here with you tonight. So as you guys are logging on, please go ahead and like and share this video. Remember that I told you on last night that it is important that you like and share these videos so that um, the media will keep our videos circulating during what we know has been such a trying time. Again, last night also, if you caught the videos on replay from YouTube, yet again, the video from last night was cut very short. I taped for 30 minutes with you guys, but yet it was only showing about 16 minutes or so when I uploaded the video to YouTube and or SoundCloud. So I hope that you guys that were able to watch it live, that you were able to catch the entire broadcast. But I don't know exactly how that worked out. But nevertheless, we're going to keep trying, and we're going to keep showing up, and we're going to work through all these kinks, and hopefully the system will be lined out. And I certainly hope it's working for our special guest host, Miss Amani Aisha, that will be joining us tomorrow night to be discussing with us about money and marriages. So I'm excited about that. Tonight, we're talking about um, pieces of poverty. And I did part one on last night, and tonight I'm just briefly going to show up here and talk about part two, and hopefully give us some insight of why we continue to uh, engage in these cycles of poverty. Now, last night I focused a majority of the time just focused on the mindset that we have that keeps us repeating the same generational cycles of poverty. Um, we know that our grandmothers and grandfathers and great grands, for some of us, we know that they did the best that they could to um, keep us fed and a roof over our head, and sometimes that's all they had, and they knew what they knew. And if it was frying up chicken or frying up turkey necks or whatever it is to keep us fed, then that's what they did. And now we're in a world where we have access to more. We have access to food. We have access to um, education. We have access to uh, more employment, jobs, and things of that nature. But sometimes I find that when we're in these cycles of poverty, other than the mindset, it's just that we just do not have the knowledge we need to do something different. And so, being that we haven't been exposed to different or more opportunities or different types of jobs than what we know in our own small communities, then because we have never been exposed, never heard of it, then we are just not aware. All we know is what we see in our communities, and I mentioned last night that a lot of what we see in our communities are churches. We see plenty of churches, we see plenty of liquor stores, and we see plenty of fast food establishments. And so that's all we know. In this area, we see a lot of different healthcare facilities. So that's what we know. So we know healthcare and we know fast food. And when we really look at the population of people that uh, populate our communities, that is probably some of the most uh, employed areas that you will find people who live in poverty in. So they work the minimum wage nurse aid jobs or nursing jobs. They work the minimum wage fast food establishment jobs. They work the minimum wage convenience store and um, uh, Walmarts and just stores, department stores, and things of that nature. And so, what we find is that because we continue to repeat this cycle, depending on the size of our families, like I mentioned before, sometimes we have to find ourselves working 2 and 3 jobs just to be able to make the ends meet. So a lot of times we get to the end of the money before we get to the end of the month. And so we're having to find ourselves looking to do more and more. And we find ourselves out of the house more and more. And we're not able to break that cycle of poverty because just surviving puts so much demand on drawing us away from our family. Now, me, I was a single mother, and I started my career in nursing and then transitioned over to education later years down the road. And I had to do that, or I decided to do that because of the demands of the nursing field. It took so much demand for me to be away from my children and having to entrust my care into looking for babysitters or for somewhere for my babies to stay during the night and things of that nature while I was on the job. So it just did not work well for me. So it didn't take me long before I was over the medical field, the nursing field, and the demands that it placed upon us. And though the financial side of it was decent, I still found myself even working on these jobs and establishing careers early in my life, still find myself with overwhelming debt and struggling to make ends meet a lot of times. So, what is it about poverty? What is it about poverty that possesses such a stronghold that generation after generation after generation, we're unable to overcome? Usually, you know, those families that generation after generation live in the projects, generation after generation, struggling alcoholics and addicts, generation after generation, criminal activity and often prison or in and out of jail, a life of crime, generation after generation with mental illness and dysfunction, generation after generation renting, no home ownership, generation after generation enslaved by religion. And I have to be honest with you guys. We keep doing the same thing that grandmama and them did, expecting different results for us and our families. And it seems like we never get it in our head that we can't continue to do the same thing and expect different results from it. So if we continue to be unlearned about so many areas in our life, then that is what keep us prey to poverty. This is why we cannot overcome. This is why our communities aren't developing and growing at a speed that would minimize or reduce the risk of poverty for the next generation. And I know that more of us are focused on education, getting an education, a valuable education, going to school. A lot of us, we make that a priority now for our families to make sure that our kids value education. But is the education that we send them for, is that the type of education that they're needing to break the cycle of poverty? Well, let's think about it, because we got that same education that we're stressing them to go get. That same education that we're preaching to them and how important it is. We've gotten that same education. We've been there first through 12th grade. We've been to college and had some college classes and all of that. How well does that work for you? How well did the system work for you in preventing the repeat of the cycle of poverty? Well, I can tell you that it didn't work so well for me. I thought that's what I needed to break the cycle of poverty. Good evening, Miss Shondell. How are you? I thought that's what I needed to break the cycle of poverty. But it didn't do it, because what it did, when I went to college to advance my education, I find that I incurred more debt just trying to obtain that education than I was already in before I went. Not only that, what I'm finding out now, after so many years of trying this thing, is that the things that I needed to know, not even my master level education gave that to me. Not even a master level education equipped me with the knowledge that I needed to break the cycle of poverty. But it hit me in the pockets. Now I got student loan debt up to my eyeballs. And guess what? Now my daughters are repeating the same cycle. And it's because I'm just learning what I should have learned years ago, but I just did not make the connection. I always thought education was the key. And yes, education is the key, but it has to be the right kind of education. And the education that saved me and that now has shifted and begin to break down the poverty in my life did not come from a high school diploma or a master level degree. It came from self-educating right here in the comfort of my home or throughout my commute to work, listening to those that have broken the cycle and have did it successfully. And now they're generating wealth for generations to come. So what happened there? I began to educate myself on the things that were connected to my reality, where I am, things I could relate to. What's really important when it comes to breaking the generational curse of poverty. Because at the end of the day, whatever you do, most likely your kids are going to do, their kids are going to do, their kids are going to do. And so it's now learning these new habits, learning these new behaviors so that we can break this cycle. We don't have to let another generation suffer and become victim to poverty. And when I say poverty, I'm just not talking about living in the slums, guys. Remember that I told you that my annual salary is about $30,000 on a teacher salary. And even with that $30,000 annual salary, with the size of my family, I still fall in the on the lines of poverty. I still qualify as being in a high poverty area, right? So what I find is that it doesn't matter about your education. There are many educated people living in poverty. There are many educated people still have negative mindsets. There are still educated people that are still ignorant to a lot of things that they just think they know. And so this is what poverty looks like. And when you look around, you can see poverty all around you. Now, when you look at people that fail to launch their voice, what do I mean? Fail to launch their voice. It's people that just sit and complain about everything. They're not involved in the things in their community. They have no say with what goes on. They're not involved with voting and different things like that goes on that directly affects them. So when you fail to launch your voice, when you fail to allow your voice to be heard, then you're a victim of poverty. And until you find your voice, you will continue to repeat the cycle of poverty. Now, I wonder how many of us, and I know some of our babies are up and grown, but some of you are still raising babies, and some of you have grandchildren and things like that watch you and they look up to you. How many of you talk to your babies about finding their voice? And not only that, how many of you talk to them about registering to vote? And how many of you guys have gotten together to go to your town hall meetings or your city hall meetings to find out the things that are going on and where the money from the taxes and things like that are being spent in your community, and just having a voice and having a say and showing up? How many of us go to the school board meetings unless there's something going on that's gotten so far out of control? How many of us know the people that are serving on our boards in the education system of our kids? How many of us show up at the school other than on parent-teacher conference night to find out who's actually in the classroom with our kids and what kind of education they're really getting? So for everything you can sit here and say, no, I haven't done that, or you answer no to, then you have failed to launch your voice. And because of that, the cycle of poverty will continue. And remember, poverty doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your bank account. You can have all the money in the bank account and live pretty good. But if your mindset has not yet made the shift the cycle of poverty continues. Because if you haven't launched a voice, that's good. You know, voting is important. Now, can vote and actually voting, then that now that they can and they qualify, now we need to make sure that they're actually exercising their right and allowing their voice to be heard. That's important. That's the start. That's moving in the direction of breaking the cycle of poverty. Okay? So if you fail to launch your voice, and that's actually really getting involved with the things that matter and directly impact our children, then we will continue the cycle of poverty. Because if we're quiet and we're just talking about it at home and complaining amongst ourselves, our kids tend to take on that same nature. Because they feel like just because they're voicing it at home or complaining about it, that it's going to change something. But remember, we can't continue to do the same things, show the same behaviors, and expect different results. So we actually have to be intentional and proactive and really show our face and really let our voices be heard on the issues that matter to us. But I know some of you live in the same community as I do, and we drive on roads that tear our cars up every day. Every day we get on the roads and go to the store. We turn our shocks up. We turn our tires up. You know, poor infrastructures. This is what you find in high poverty communities. There's a reason for that. The money is there, but we're not showing our face to help delegate where the money needs to be spent on the things that's important to us. And see, this is what happens when we fail to launch our voice. So we take on this mindset that this is just the way it is, or there's nothing we can do about it. Well, yes, there is. We break the cycle by learning what our voice is and begin to launch our voice. And that's the same thing when it comes to our health and wellness. Remember, I told you yesterday that this is how we know that we're in poverty. It's when we have doctor's offices day in and day out overcrowded. We have drive-thrus from the fast food restaurants in our neighborhoods overcrowded and backed up to the highway. You know, one thing affects another. We have poor nutrition. As a result of that poor nutrition, we have poor health. And as a result of poor health, we also have poor healthcare systems right here in our own neighborhood. So the way we break that cycle as it relates to poverty is learning what it is to educate ourselves on good, healthy access to good, healthy, nutritious foods. And I already shared with you how we say, yes, that food is going to cost a little more, but look at all the money you're spending at the drive-thru, and all the money you're spending at the doctor's office, and all the money you're spending in return at the drugstore. You see how you need the shift of the mindset, guys? Either way, you're spending the money. But we that are in poverty, we spend it defeating ourselves, eating ourselves to death, medicating ourselves to death. because we don't know nutrition. We know snacks, we know high carbohydrates, we know crunchy, salty, fatty foods. That's what we know. Why is that what we know? Because that's what we've been taught from generation to generation to generation. And I know that, and I just learned that some of even the city areas, in certain areas of their communities, that they don't have healthy foods in some of the stores in particular communities. And those communities are those communities with high poverty. So they're bringing to us what we settle for. So if we haven't demand for a more nutritious foods, if we haven't demand to learn more about eating healthy, if we haven't demand the fresh foods from like the farmers markets and fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that, if we hadn't demand that for our communities and for our areas, how are we going to break that cycle? And how can we demand it when we fail to launch our voice, guys? These things are all connected. Poverty doesn't just happen. We don't just happen to repeat cycles of poverty. And we don't have to remain victims to poverty. We can learn better and do better and begin to set a different direction for our lives. And not only our lives, but our children's lives as well. And you're not going to get that sitting in a college institution or sitting in a public education classroom. They don't teach it. You know why they don't teach it? Because you got teachers, and I'm a teacher, look at me, that look like me in the classroom with your babies, sitting in front of your babies every day, and they're in poverty themselves. They're hopeless. They don't know any better. All they know is 8 take away 3 equals 93. And to teach your child how to manipulate that. And it's by the book. And they're overwhelmed with debt. And they're overwhelmed with life. And they haven't figured out the formula yet to dig themselves out of poverty. So they have to come to a job that they hate or that they're burnt out on to try to teach your child something that they're going to go and repeat the same cycle. Same cycle as us that have already been there. So it's hard for me as an educator to teach somebody something that I haven't figured out myself. But I can teach them 1 + 2. I can teach them 1 + 2, but I can't teach them financial literacy because I hadn't figured that out yet either. Because when I went to get my degree, they didn't teach us financial literacy and how to manage our money and all that good stuff. The value of $1 and how to make our money work for us. The things that really begin to break down the cycle of poverty. The things that really matter to generational wealth and legacy. Those are the things that are going to really matter. So you got unlearned educators in the classroom that has been conditioned to teach on a curriculum that continues to support poverty mindsets. So our babies can go to college, get a degree, graduate, and go get a job. And so many of our babies are graduating from college, going to get their degrees, and still have to return home to minimum wage employment because they can't get the job that they thought they could. Or maybe the degree isn't useful in the community. Or maybe less qualified people are getting the jobs over them. So we break the cycle of this poverty by tapping into the talents and the gifts that we have and begin to launch our own economic systems. Begin to grow our own businesses. Begin to educate our own children. Begin to generate generational wealth together. I don't believe there's ever been a time that I've told my girls to go to college and get a degree and go get you a job. What I did tell them was, you go to college and get your education and you create your own. Learn all you can and you go and create your own. That's what I teach mine. That's what I tell mine. Now, regardless of what they do, I am now setting the example before them. Because even though I go to a 9 to 5 to teach in a classroom, my day doesn't stop there. My day begins when I get home from work. And by doing this, that's how you begin to break down the cycle of poverty. Entrepreneurship is within each and every one of us. It's the way we were created. Some of us many gifts, some of us 1 or 2 gifts, but whatever it is, it all matters and it all works together to where we can all come together and begin to break down the cycles of poverty. Because whatever it is that you do well, I need it. The education that I give and promote to people, you need it. So do you see how we're all connected together? But with that mindset of poverty that we have been so conditioned to think, instead it resulted in jealousy. Instead it resulted in being judgmental. And instead it resulted in our inability to trust and support and to lean on one another. And when you don't have a community of people that can come together to agree and let their voices be heard, we repeat the cycle of poverty. You know you're in poverty when you don't even have access to clean water. So if you're drinking water and that water is not clean, what is it doing to your body? But if you go back to the beginning and launch your voice, then you'd speak up and have a say on that as well. You'll be there at the town hall meetings and at the city hall meetings and things like that. And you'll be showing up in the community and you'll be letting your voices be heard and demand for cleaner water and to find solutions for the issues that we deal with, drinking all this parasitic water, taking it in, destroying our bodies. Another thing is that we lack high wage jobs. in areas of high poverty. I'm sitting here thinking, just looking throughout my community now, I can't think of one. And yes, they have the casinos, and yes, they have Choctaw Nation, and a lot of these establishments that have popped up. But no high tech, high wage jobs in this area. You know why they won't come? And it's not because the community is keeping them out, as we've been conditioned to think. It's because they don't have enough high tech, high educated people to run them if they did come. That's why. So why they want to come here? That's why they go to the big cities. So until we're willing to learn something different and to unlearn the things that we think we know, we continue to repeat cycles of poverty. There is more to poverty than just being hungry, living in the projects, high school education, being unemployed, disabled. All those are elements and characteristics of it, results of it. But there's so many pieces to poverty that we have yet to tap into. And the only way we're going to break that cycle, guys, is if we begin to shift our mindset and unlearn all the ignorant stuff that has gotten us into the situation that we're in. We have to unlearn and then learn the things that are valuable and things that really begin to break the cycle. And that comes through self-educating. You can't depend on someone to teach your child something that they don't even know. All right, guys. It has been great. I think I've held you long enough tonight. It has been great being here with you tonight. If you get an opportunity, go ahead and check out my website at www.triciabraysmith.weebly.com. Also, guys, for those of you who are interested in writing a book and letting your voices be heard, don't forget that next week, June 8th through 12th, I am offering a 5-day course on learning how to write and publish your book. You can find that link to that resource also on my website. So if you already have written books and you want to know how to get that book circulating and generating more income from books that you've already written, this course would also be a good opportunity for you as well. If you haven't already checked out my books, Recreating a Better Me, Time to Talk, and Struggling to Forgive, please make sure that you get a copy of that book. And if you've already gotten a copy of my books and it has blessed you, please consider buying the book and gifting it to someone connected to you. That's the way we share the love. That's the way we can break the cycles together. We have to get the resources into the hands of those that we love. And I can guarantee that my books will initiate the first step to financial freedom. It will educate about financial literacy. It will educate about mindsets. It will educate about overcoming challenging issues in our life and setting our lives on a different direction. And a lot of it at the end of the day It's breaking generational cycles of poverty, from our finances to our mindsets, guys, because that's important to all of us. We have to get this thing right. I appreciate you guys joining me. Don't forget to be here with me tomorrow night as we have Miss Amani Aisha here joining us tomorrow. Uh, that's going to be coming in talking about marriage. I mean, money and marriage. So I'm excited. And she's going to take us to school. Let's come back here so that we can be educated, empowered, and encouraged. I am your host, Tricia Bray Smith. Good night, everybody.